Part 59. Adorable Baby, The Miracle Doctor is So Awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 581. There is a row of river houses on the bank of Jinling River, built along the water, half on the water and half on the ground. There is a wind lattice and water sill hall in the back half of the house. These halls are connected by floating corridors, with winding corridors and light curtains hanging down. It's romantic. The most famous one is called Zhangchunwu. Zhangchunwu is in the serious business of catering and drinking, but it has a cooperative relationship with the painted boats on the river. The girls on the boat attract customers to Zhangchunwu, and Zhangchunwu provides customers for the girls. Mutual benefit, win-win. Today, Zhangchunwu is about to welcome a big shot, and the boss told Chen Sunyang in advance that she must send the most beautiful girl to accompany the guest. This is also the reason why Shen Yazi and Huazu were chosen. The boat stopped leisurely in the back hall of Zhangchunwu. Huazu held a beauty fan in her hand, and Niao Tingting got off the boat and reached the shore. From behind the fan, a wave of eyes came across. "Follow me later, don't make trouble, you know? If you hurt me, my mother will forgive you. I can't make it easy for you either." She spoke softly, and her eyes were even smiling, but the cruelty in her words was unmistakable. Shen Yazi remained silent. Everything she was experiencing now made her feel like she was in an illusory dream, leaving her without a sense of down-to-earth reality. So she just watched quietly and didn't speak if she could. "Hey, Sister Huazu is here? The guests have just arrived, and you are here by chance." A rather smart-looking guy came over quickly, bent down, and smiled at Huazu. Noticing Shen Yazi following behind her, he took a quick look and his mind wandered. He didn't dare to look more and was busy leading the way. While passing through a corridor, Shen Yazi saw a middle-aged man circling anxiously. "What should I do? Why did Lao Yu fall ill after being so good? Today, he is not here, and Master Qin has to kill me. Alas! None of the boys in the back kitchen can take over at the critical moment. It's really frustrating." This person is none other than the boss of Zhangchunwu. He was so anxious that he hit the wall when a very graceful female voice suddenly came from behind him. "My ancestor was an imperial chef, and I also have good cooking skills. You might as well let me try it." Asterisk. In the elegant room, sitting above him was a man wearing a black gown. He was very young and had a very handsome face. Wearing this kind of gown, he would have looked nondescript at first, but his calm and dignified temperament completely supported the gown. Clothes and people complement each other. Sitting next to him was a stocky man, about 50 years old, with one eye lame. It is Qin Zhenglin who is the host this time, a well-known wealthy businessman in Huading, who knows both black and white, and is known as Mr. Qin. It's just that compared to the young man next to him, both his reputation and status are far inferior. Huazu made wine with green plums and poured wine for the two big men with a jug. The wine falls into the cup and makes a clear dripping sound. Qin Zhenglin's cloudy eyes wandered over Huazu's body, and his stubby fingers touched her chin from time to time. When Huazu turned to his side, he reached out and pinched her buttocks. The smile lines at the corners of Huazu's mouth remained unchanged, and the hand when pouring the wine was still steady, without spilling a drop of wine. "Come on, brother Switting, let me give you a toast." Qin Zhenglin picked up the wine glass and faced the man next to him. A pure white hand picked up the wine glass on the table, touched it with him, and drank the wine in one gulp. "Ha ha, so happy." Qin Zhenglin picked up the dish with chopsticks and chewed it. "Well, this stir-fried kidney flour is pretty good, it goes well with wine." He also tasted the steamed pork with rice flour. It was delicate, fragrant, and had a wonderful taste. "Only, how do I taste it? The food on this table doesn't look like Lao Yu's cooking. His dishes are very flavorful and he likes to add peppercorns every time I eat it. I have to bite my tongue." The waiter standing next to him immediately smiled and said, "Master Chin, you are indeed a long-time gourmet. Your tongue is very powerful. You can taste it as soon as you taste it. I am not satisfied with you too. Today, I have an old habit. There is nothing I can do about it. Working for the two gentlemen, our boss found a girl from nowhere, and she cooked this table." "Girl, that's really strange. What's your name?" "It's called Fengju. It looks so handsome." "Oh? How handsome is she? Can she compare to our Huazu girl?" Mr. Chin pinched Huazu's face. The waiter glanced at Huazu and said, "Hey, Fengju girl and Zuzu girl are both equal in their own merits. I originally thought that Fengju girl looks like a lady from a wealthy family, and I'm afraid she might even mess with the pot. Can't get up? Guess what? Hurry up and say it, don't rattle me." Qin Zhenglin used to be a horse bandit, and he would easily act like a father to others when he got excited. The waiter hurriedly apologized and smiled, "That girl Fengju is really beyond her appearance. She showed off her skills as soon as she came up. Look at this squirrel fish, it is as thick as a root. Even Lao Yu may not have this skill. Hearing what you say, I want to take a look at that Fengju girl. Go and call her over. Tell her that her cooking is good, and I want to reward her." Mr. Chin waved his hand. "In fact, it has another meaning. This goose Whitting seems to be obviously not interested in painting beads. If the phoenix beads are really as handsome as the waiter said, maybe he will be attracted to them, and when the time comes to talk about things, it will be smoother, right? Perhaps Goose Whitting will agree to him just for the sake of the beauty?" In the kitchen, Shen Yizi didn't know that the waiter was so cheating. She thought she had escaped disaster by going into the kitchen to cook, and was trying to sneak away secretly by talking to the waiter in the kitchen. "Hey, Miss Fengju, come with me quickly, Master Chin wants to see you." The guy ran in excitedly. Shen Yizi. Seeing that he couldn't hide, Shen Yizi smeared a handful of black ash on the chimney, followed the waiter to the private room, and applied a thin layer of black makeup on himself. With her painted like this, Master Chin must not have any sexual interest, right? "Master Gu, Master Chin, I brought him here." The guy let Shen Yizi in behind him. The moment he saw Shen Yizi, Qin Zhenglin almost cursed. No matter how high his expectations were, he would be disappointed. For this black girl, the guy actually told him that she looked good. Is it on par with painting beads? He saw that it was not him who was lame, but the guy. Go, 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 it's really off-putting. Shen Yizi felt happy and turned around to leave without raising his head. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Huazu, who had been quietly acting as a beauty vase, suddenly laughed and said, "Fengju, why did you paint your face so black?" Even Master Chin misunderstood. "Darkened your face? Don't go away, turn around and raise your face." Qin Zhenglin squinted and took a closer look at Shen Yizi. Upon closer inspection, he found many flaws. Hey, there are actually people who pretend to be ugly on purpose. This Fengju is a bit interesting, don't you think so, brother Xueteng? Xueteng? Isn't her fiancé's name Goose Whitting? Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 582. Shen Yizi followed Qin Zhenglin's gaze and saw Goose Whitting sitting above him. She was shocked. She didn't expect that it was really her devilish fiancé. But, is there a big difference between the person in front of her and the perception in her memory? This Goose Whitting's face is pure and clear, his eyes are black and white, his lips are bright and moist, and he doesn't have any excessive aura at all. At first glance, he looks like a clean and self-sufficient person. Just sitting there gives people a feeling of Yuji. In short, it is very stable. But not old-fashioned. Like a jar of crystal clear aged wine, quietly exuding a clear and mellow fragrance. It is the best. Where is the ruthless and lecherous villain executioner Luo Jinping calls him? The most important thing is that the moment she saw him, she felt extremely familiar, as if they had known each other for a long time. There was even a sense of grievance. As if he was the one who could tolerate her infinitely, indulge her and let her act like a spoiled child. Before anyone could react, Shen Yiziruyan rushed into Gu Switting's arms. "Brother Gu. I am Gigi, your fiancé. Please help me out quickly, woo woo woo." Xiaoxi, who was in charge of the escort, originally thought that she was going to do something bad to Gu Switting and was about to pull her away. When he heard this, he immediately took his hand back as if he was electrocuted. Since when did eldest brother have a fiancé? But that's not the point. The point is that the eldest brother has a fiancé. Doesn't rounding it off mean he's married? Brother is single. He must tell his brothers the good news when he goes back. Xiaoxi kept a serious face, but the villain in his heart was already rolling with excitement. As for Qin Zhenglin and others, they were already stunned. Seeing that Gu Switting, who had never been flirtatious with women, actually allowed that woman to hold him, he believed Shen Yizi's words. As the person involved, Gu Switting always sat as calm as a mountain, letting Shen Yizi hang around his neck and whine. Shen Yizi whined for a while and couldn't stop whining. "Brother Gu." She slowly raised her head, a tear in her eye sliding down her cheek, dragging a messy mark on her dark face, which looked really funny. Gu Switting couldn't help but smile in his eyes, and reached out to wipe it for her. As a result, her face became even more ugly. A chuckle escaped from Gu Switting's mouth. He took out a snow-white handkerchief, moistened it and wiped her face with gentle movements and a focused expression, as if she was a treasure he held in his hands. Shen Yizi was a little bit burned by his eyes, so he grabbed the handkerchief and wiped it on his face haphazardly. Gu Switting also let her go, wrapping his arms around her and stroking her back. Qin Zhenglin suddenly slapped his thigh. "Oh! Brother Xueting and his sister-in-law reunited today. It's such a happy event. Draw beads, why don't you fill up the wine quickly?" Huazu moved over with heavy steps and poured wine for the three of them. However, at this moment, her hands could not help but tremble slightly. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 tastes of food, the atmosphere in the private room has become warm. Of course, this is all thanks to Qin Zhenglin, who is dedicated to telling jokes. "Okay, all of you, go down." Qin Zhenglin waved his hand, as if he had something to talk about. Shen Yizi sat on Gu Switting's lap and did not move. At any rate, she has now made up her mind to rely on him. "Brother Xueting, should I ask my buddy to take my younger siblings out for a walk?" The first time Gu Switting spoke to Shen Yizi, his tone was indescribably familiar and familiar. "Zizi, go out and wait for me." A clear voice rang in her ears, and she called Gigi not too skillfully, as if she had called it countless times. He told her to go out and wait for him, but his hot palm pressed her waist with a slightly heavy force, obviously not wanting her to move. Shen Yizi blinked, and instantly the charming and willful young lady came online. "I don't. I will stay here with you. I am your fiancé, and I will be your wife from now on. Husband and wife are one. What do you want? Is it something I can't know?" As she spoke, she rubbed him back and forth in his arms, circling his neck with her hands. A fragrant breath came out of her lips as she spoke. Gu Switting's eyes instantly became intense, and the force on her waist could not help but increase. The corner of Qin Zhenglin's mouth twitched. "Miss Shen is really passionate and straightforward, haha. Seeing you young people so bored and unwilling to leave for a while, I feel that I am really old. Old. From now on, the world will be like this. It's for you young people." No one answered. The atmosphere is slightly awkward. Gu Switting took out his pipe, and Xiaoxi immediately offered him shredded tobacco to light a cigarette for him. Shen Yizi stretched out his hand. "I'll do it." Xiaoxi glanced at Gu Switting, and when he saw that he didn't say anything, he knew that this was tacit approval. It seems that the eldest brother is really interested in his sister-in-law. Shen Yizi went to wash his hands and face first, and wiped away any water stains, especially on his hands, without leaving any oil stains. Otherwise, the oily layer on the surface of the pipe cannot penetrate the texture, and it will be tarnished in a few days. The pipe in Goose Whitting's hand looks like an old item that he usually uses. It has a clear texture, a warm and thick texture, and it is obviously that he often holds it in his hand and rubs it. Wouldn't it be a pity if it was polluted? While Shen Yizi was washing his face, Goose Whitting and Qin Zhenglin had already sat down on the solid wood sofa chairs. "Brother Xueting, I come here with full sincerity this time. Mr. Akita has promised that as long as you are willing to serve him, then." Just at this moment, Shen Yizi came over. Qin Zhenglin glanced at her face and his mind immediately went crazy. He even forgot what he wanted to say and just stared at her. Goose Whitting handed the pipe to Shen Yizi, glanced at him lightly, but said completely coldly, "That's it?" Qin Zhenglin trembled, quickly looked away, and smiled, just from now on, you will be the leader of Huading." Goose Whitting didn't react at all. He put his big hand on Shen Yizi's head and rubbed it gently with his thumb. Nothing could be seen on his face. Shen Yizi knelt down at his feet and cleaned out the ash from the pipe first, but still left a small amount, about 1/10 of the amount. In this way, when he lit it later, there would be a layer of ash to insulate, making it less likely to burn his hands. Immediately, he skillfully filled the pipe with cut tobacco at an unhurried pace. He only filled the pipe 7 to 8 minutes full before he stopped. Qin Zhenglin watched from the side and couldn't help but praise, "Looking at the posture of my younger siblings, they usually help their elders light cigarettes at home, right? Filling tobacco may seem simple, but there are many ways to do it. Can't be full, can't be tight. It is too full and pressed hard. The tobacco is very oily and the smoke will expand after it is lit. If it is packed too tightly, it will be difficult to ignite. If it does light up, the smoke will easily swell out and the edge of the pipe will be burned black, which is not only unsightly but also a waste of tobacco." However, Shen Yizi didn't make any of these problems and lit the cigarette for Goose Whitting perfectly. He took a breath and slowly exhaled a wisp of smoke. The face that was originally cold turned out to be very under the smoke. Thinking of his previous operations, Shen Yizi suddenly felt a little embarrassed. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 583. After finishing smoking a cigarette, Goose Whitting said, "I'll think about this." "Brother Qin, aren't you in a hurry?" What can Qin Zhenglin say? Haha, don't be hasty, Brother Xueting needs to think about it. However, when Goose Whitting left the private room with Shen Yizi, he kicked over the crystal coffee table in front of him. What the hell? I don't know what's good or bad. Just because I have some ability, I don't take your grandfather and me seriously, huh? Sooner or later, you will suffer a loss. In the hall, Chen Sunyang took a deep breath as she looked at Shen Yizi walking over with Goose Whitting. I didn't expect that what Huazu said was true. This Feng Zhi really has such a good face in vain. You said that you have such a strong relationship, couldn't you have said it earlier? Why would I take the risk of offending Mr. Gu and keep you here? The food and drinks have already been served. Master Gu, I haven't seen you for a long time, but you still have the same style. Chen Sunyang came up and said with a smile. Goose Whitting looked at Shen Yizi, how to deal with it? Chen Sunyang's face turned pale. She originally wanted to have a relationship with Mr. Gu, but now it seems that she is in doubt. She twisted the veil with her fingers, feeling uneasy. Before Shen Yizi could speak, Hwaza suddenly took a step forward and knelt down towards her, his knees hitting the cold floor with a thud. Shen Yizi felt pain when he heard it. Gu Swiding didn't even raise his eyebrows. Ms. Shen, I offended you in the private room before because I was blind and blind. I am responsible for my own actions. I hope you will not implicate others. I will bear whatever punishment you want to punish me. Hwaza knelt deeply on the ground. Because she was kneeling, her graceful shoulders, slender waist, and plump hips were all on full display. Shen Yizi could see her beautiful figure clearly from the top down. Gu Swiding next to him can naturally do it too. Shen Yizi suddenly laughed. Chen Sunyang looked at her smile and suddenly felt frightened. Okay, you've said so. If I don't punish you, won't your kindness be in vain? Shen Yizi let go of Gu Swiding's arm, squatted down in front of Hwaza, and gently stroked her hair. This hair is really good, like satin. Let's shave it off. Hwaza's shoulders trembled. And Gu Swiding, from beginning to end, did not say a word except to Shen Yizi. Shen Yizi was in a good mood after fixing some troubles with Blackheart White Lotus, until she followed Gu Swiding into the car, sharing the cramped back seat. Gu Swiding leaned back on the chair and closed his eyes to rest. Shen Yizi slowly moved over, grabbed one of his hands, put it around his waist, and leaned towards him. Brother Gu, I want to confess to you I am young and ignorant, and I am big-hearted and brainless. Xiaoxi, who was sitting in the passenger seat in front, couldn't bear it any longer. As soon as he raised his eyes, he saw Gu Swiding opening his eyes in the rear-view mirror and looking at him lightly. Xiaoxi was frightened and pretended to be dead. Shen Yizi's emotions that had finally been brewing suddenly fell apart when Xiaoxi interrupted them. What else? Gu Swiding put his hand on her face and caressed her carelessly. The car was driving, and the night scene outside the window swayed across his face from time to time, making his features more profound and handsome. Shen Yizi was mesmerized by the sight and said nothing. Gu Swiding looked down at her and was instantly caught by her sparkling crystal eyes. In the narrow space, the faces of the two people were only a palm apart, and this distance was still shrinking. Just when their lips were about to touch, a bullet was fired unexpectedly. If Gu Swiding hadn't reacted in time and threw Shen Yizi on the seat, at least one of the two would have been seriously injured or even died. It's a sniper, Xiaoxi immediately made a judgment. The driver was also an old man who was following Gu Swiding. He had seen this kind of scene many times, so he didn't panic at all. He immediately increased the speed to the maximum and quickly turned to another road. Brother, are you okay? Xiaoxi asked. Gu Swiding stood up above Shen Yizi, caressed her back, and then said with a comforting tone, it's okay. The car drove through the large black carved iron gate and stopped in front of a heavy and elegant white villa. Gu Swiding walked in with Shen Yizi. Ma Zhang heard the movement and came over to greet her. Sir, are you back? Noticing Shen Yizi beside him, he was surprised and happy. This was the first time that Mr. brought a woman back. Of course, Miss Xiao does not count, and she can also see that the husband only has a brother-sister relationship with Miss Xiao, and has no relationship between a man and a woman. Who is this lady? Shen Yizi, my fiancé. Zhang Ma, please pack up the empty room on the third floor for Zizi to live in. Hey, okay, I'll go clean it up right now. Ma Zhang looked at Shen Yizi with a smile that couldn't be hidden on her face. Shen Yizi greeted her, Mother Zhang. Hey, Zhang Ma responded happily. Looking at the pair standing side by side, she felt that they were a perfect match. Miss Shen, have you eaten? There is duck soup simmering in the kitchen, let me get you a bowl. Go to the kitchen. Shen Yizi left Gu Swiding and followed him. Zhang Ma, just ask me to tell you. Ask Miss Shen to see more people. Yes, from now on, Shen, I know you are going to marry in, so I can't see you outside. Zhang Ma said happily. At the dinner table, Shen Yizi drank the old duck soup that Zhang's mother served for her. Zhizi, this old duck soup is the most nourishing. It is said to nourish yin and stomach, replenish blood, and promote water. I don't understand that, but drinking more of it is good for your health. And this duck is a specially raised old male duck, pounded with velvet antlers and fed with sorghum until it grew up, sir. He drinks a bowl of it every night. Shen Yizi praised, well, it's really delicious. The duck meat inside is stewed and it's not greasy at all. It's very fragrant and has a umami flavor. Mom, your craftsmanship is so good. Drink more if you like. Zhang Ma was so happy that she couldn't help but smile. Asterisk. French concession. Qin House. In the study room, Qin Jinglin held the phone and nodded towards the other end of the phone. Hey. Akita-kun, don't worry, I will definitely finish what you asked me to do. After hanging up the phone, Qin Jinglin sat down on the sofa, leaned back, lit a cigar, and puffed away. After a while, the phone rang again. When I picked it up, the person on the other end of the phone said, Gu Switting was attacked near number 33 Wutong Street tonight, and the sniper failed. Hang up after finishing speaking. A flash of light flashed in Qin Jinglin's eyes, and he called his confidant Zhang Yun on the phone, go and publicize our Mr. Gu, saying that he has agreed to join the Empire and serve Akita-kun. Zhang Yun still didn't understand. Master Qin, didn't Gu Switting refuse to agree tonight? Qin Jinglin chuckled twice and glanced over meaningfully, he will agree. After his prompting, Zhang Yunhui came to his senses and said, oh, I understand. Master Qin is the best. I'll do it right now. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 584. After Shen Yizi settled in Gu's house, he didn't see Gu Switting for 3 days in a row. Mama Zhang, is brother Gu always so busy? At the dinner table, Shen Yizi took a sip of porridge and asked. Ma Zhang was also surprised, it's not normal. I still have time to come back for a meal. Afraid that Shen Yizi would be disappointed, she hurriedly comforted him, Zhizi, don't think too much about it. Sir, he is like this when he is busy sometimes. Shen Yizi laughed and said, Mother Zhang, where are you thinking? Why should I think too much? As soon as he finished speaking, Gu Switting, who had not been seen for several days, walked in with a woman. That woman is enchanting and charming, and every move she makes is full of charm. If you don't have enough concentration, you may be captivated just by looking at her. Gu Switting took off his coat, and the woman stepped over the servant, took it, hung it on the shelf, and followed her step by step into the living room. Shen Yizi smiled playfully and went up to hold Gu Switting's arm. You're back. I thought you left me here on purpose and just ignored me. Have you eaten? Even if you eat, you still have to eat some more with me. Without any explanation, he led him to the dining table. Gu Switting left her alone. Mi Yang looked at her, her pupils shrank suddenly, and she called out to the reincarnation disc in her heart, what's going on? Didn't I ask you to arrange Shen Yizi to be a prostitute? Why is she here? Seeing Gu Switting's pampering look on her face, Mi Yang could no longer remain calm. Obviously she has set her identity as the woman closest to Gu Switting, but she has made no progress following Gu Switting these past few days, and Shen Yizi has actually already entered the room. Looking at the close intimacy between the two of them, she almost broke her silver teeth. Reincarnation disc, Shen Yizi is Gu Switting's fiancée. She was indeed sold into the land of fireworks before, but she met Gu Switting when she first picked up a guest 3 days ago and was brought back by him. Mi Yang. She was madly insulting the reincarnation disc in her heart, this unreliable bastard. Let Shen Yizi's identity be arranged as a prostitute, but the result was good. Shen Yizi just went to the Fengjia place for a formality, and met Gu Switting the first time he picked up a customer. What kind of luck is this? Small plate, Did you mean it on purpose? Samsara disk, I do everything according to your requirements, and once the world is created, it will not be transferred by my will. Their encounter was something I did not expect. Mi Yang took a deep breath and managed to calm down. What about the fiancé? As long as Gu Switting falls in love with her, is it not a matter of minutes to break off the engagement? She enjoys the pleasure of snatching men away from other women the most. Thinking of this, Mi Yang rekindled her fighting spirit. She walked over with a bright smile. I guess this is Miss Shen, right? I've heard Xiao Si mention it a long time ago. Sure enough, it's better to meet than to be famous. Xiao Si has always said how handsome Miss Shen is. Only now that I meet him do I know that he is really not exaggerating. Oh, by the way, let me introduce myself. My name is Xiao Lizu. I am Brother Xueting's foster sister and secretary. If anything happens to Miss Shen in the future, just come to me directly. I am also familiar with Huiting. If Miss Shen wants to find someone, I would love to be a guide. Brother Switing? The scream was so affectionate. And he revealed his identity as adopted sister and secretary from the very beginning. Is this a demonstration to her or a demonstration? Shen Yazi took her outstretched hand and showed a business smile. Okay, then I will have to trouble Sister Xiao more. Turning to Gu Switing again, you won't blame me for driving your people without permission, right? Gu Switing pinched her dimpled face and said, whatever you want. Mi Yang clenched her fists and stepped forward as if she was embarrassed. Brother Switing, there are some clues about what you asked me to check before. I am here to report it to you this time. Shen Yazi took the bowl out of Gu Switing's hand, leaned over and kissed him on the lips. Go quickly, busy man, I won't hinder your work. Gu Switing held her waist that was about to retreat and deepened the kiss. Zhang Ma was shocked on the spot. She quickly turned around when she realized what she was doing, but she was very pleased in her heart. Originally, she thought that her husband would be a bachelor for the rest of his life. Who would have thought that in front of Miss Shen, his fiancée, he would be so enthusiastic, completely different from his usual cold demeanor. As for Mi Yang, she stared at the two people kissing each other as if no one was watching, but she restrained herself again and again, so she didn't step forward to pull them apart. These two people. Even if you lose your memory and are assigned a completely different life, will you still love each other deeply? Mi Yang couldn't help but have a doubt. Could she Gu Switing away? After a long time, Gu Switing still let go of Shen Yazi, stroking a stray strand of hair beside her ear, and said with a lingering look, if you get bored, go find Xiao Qi and ask him to take you out for a walk. Xiao Qi is his usual driver, but now he obviously plans to leave him to her. I know, go quickly, Sister Xiao is waiting impatiently. Shen Yazi pushed him. After the two of them went upstairs and entered the study, Shen Yazi waved to the little maid Xiang come with me for a walk in the garden. Okay, Madame Xiang came over happily. The title Madame was given by Zhang Ma to her subordinates. Shen Yazi couldn't refuse it, so he accepted it. Anyway, it was a matter of time. In the garden, the flowers are blooming and it looks like spring. Shen Yazi leaned forward and sniffed a dewy rose. The fresh fragrance poured into her nose, making her breath smell sweet. Xiang how many years have you worked for the Gu family? Xiang opened her fat white fingers and counted them. Well, it's been 5 years. When I was 10 years old, life at home couldn't go on anymore, so my parents sold me into the Gu family. But after I came here, I lived a life that I couldn't even imagine before. Every day, white steamed buns and rice. Sir is very kind to us servants. He gives us red envelopes during holidays and festivals, and he also gives us a lot of delicious food. Xiang detailed the benefits of being a servant here. Shen Yazi listened and gained a general understanding of many things. Just walking in the garden and chatting with Xiang it was noon before I knew it. When Shen Yazi went in, he saw Mi Yang helping to serve the dishes. Sister Xiao, you are a guest, how can I let you do this? Go and sit down, I will do it. He made a gesture to take the plate of crystal elbows from her hand. However, Mi Yang avoided her hand and said helplessly, Miss Shen, you don't know Brother Xueting's temper. He is just an old-fashioned person. You have to follow his habits in order to place the dishes in any position. Once it changes, he will be unhappy, so it's up to me and you just sit down. Shen Yizi's tone was slightly cold. Really? After the food was put on the table, Mi Yang took another bowl and filled it with soup for Gu Switing. While serving it, she told Shen Yizi, Brother Switing always drinks a bowl of soup before eating. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 585. When Gu Switing picked up the spoon to ladle the soup, Shen Yizi held his wrist and fed him a piece of tofu. Finally, he tapped the corner of his mouth with the chopsticks and said, It's not a good habit to drink soup before a meal. It's better to wait until after the meal drink it, what do you say? Gu Switing swallowed the tofu, his Adam's apple rolled twice, and he said Very well behaved. Easily changed her habits of several years. Shen Yizi was satisfied and sat down next to him. The two of them sat side by side, looking like a couple. She said to Mi Yang, Sister Xiao, habits are meant to be broken, right? You see, as soon as I take action, won't Xueting change his habit? There was a hint of playful pride in his smile, as if he was asking for credit. Mi Yang gritted her teeth and managed to maintain the smile on her face. Yes, Miss Shen still has a way. During the meal, she tried to pick up vegetables for Gu Switing, but all the dishes she picked were left to dry by him without moving. However, he ate everything Shen Yizi picked for him. Don't make this distinction too obvious. Where is the sworn sister who we promised to depend on each other for life? Why is Gu Switing's attitude towards her so cold? Samsara Pan, what I imposed on Gu Switing is just a false memory. How to turn this memory into fact is your business. If you can't do it, then you are just a symbol to him. Mi Yang almost broke the chopsticks in her hand. Don't forget that I am your master. Is this the way you talk to your master? The reincarnation disc was silent. After one meal, Mi Yang ate so much that she didn't know how to taste it. The rice in the bowl was basically untouched. However, just looking at the two people opposite her made her full. Smoking a pipe of cigarette after a meal is an unbreakable habit of Gu Switing's. Mi Yang has been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. He was about to take the pipe and light a cigarette for him, but Gu Switing refused. Shen Yizi took the pipe over under her doubtful gaze and skillfully lit the cigarette for Gu Switing. Mi Yang looked at the two of them and felt that she couldn't get in at all. She felt angry and flipped her hair. Brother Xueting, I'll leave first. Gu Switing responded lightly, not caring whether she went or stayed. Mi Yang walked to the door and couldn't help but look back. Shen Yizi lay on Gu Switing's lap like a lazy cat, playing with the buttons on his clothes with his fingers. Gu Switing lifted her chin with his fingers and put a puff of cigarette into her mouth. She choked and coughed repeatedly, tears came out, but he smiled instead. Smile is clear and graceful. What are you doing? Shen Yizi punched him angrily. Gu Switing just stroked her hair and said nothing, looking at her lovingly. Mi Yang's eyes were stung by this scene. She took a deep breath, walked out of the door, looked at the infinitely bright spring light outside, and said to Samsara, after this experience, next time, I will be the woman who sets my identity as Gu Switing. Shen Yizi is said to be a fat man. In addition to being a fat man, he is also Gu Switing's daughter-in-law. So, she sees how they can still be together. Although identity and memory have changed, certain principles in human bones will not change. Gu Switing will not steal his daughter-in-law, right? What's more, Shen Yizi is still a fat man. Don't men always love a good skin? When Shen Yazi becomes a fat man, will Gu Swiding still be affectionate and unrepentant towards her? Ah! The second trial of the world. Mi Yang regained consciousness and found herself sitting next to Gu Swiding in a gorgeous palace attire. Gu Swiding was dressed in black imperial attire and had a handsome face, but his temperament was much more mature. They were sitting in a large hall at the moment, and she and Gu Swiding were sitting at the top. On the jade table in front of you are placed melon and fruit snacks, a delicacy of delicacies. Gu Swiding held the wine glass and casually watched the singing and dancing below. Mi Yang scanned the bottom and found that Shen Yazi was sitting behind the second long desk on the left side. This time, she was as fat as a pig, and her waist was as thick as a bucket, but there were still faint traces of the original between her brows and eyes. So she recognized her at a glance. Shen Yazi sat next to a handsome man in brocade clothes. That should be her husband in this world, Gu Swiding's son. After communicating with the reincarnation disc in her mind for a while, Mi Yang was very satisfied when she learned her identity, Gu Swiding's beloved concubine Li Fei. She glanced at Gu Swiding beside her and found that he didn't even look at Shen Yazi. Sure enough, without that skin, what could Shen Yazi have to fight with her? However, she was relieved too early. The next day, Gu Swiding took a quick trip to a villa on the outskirts of Beijing to escape the summer heat, without taking any of his concubines with him. Following the lesson learned last time, Mi Yang did not dare to let Gu Swiding out of her sight this time. After learning the news, she rushed over immediately. As for the palace rules, what's that? She didn't really come to be a concubine in the harem. Shen Yazi woke up from the heat and turned over with some difficulty. In confusion, I always feel that I shouldn't be so fat. Not just her figure, but her entire life gave her a strong sense of disobedience. But I can't figure out what's wrong. But she doesn't have the temper to be aggressive, and she won't think about it if she doesn't think clearly. Opening her eyes, she saw a bright yellow gauze curtain. Not far away, there stood a red sandalwood landscape screen with 8 screens, which was completely different from the exquisite screen with pictures of ladies in her room. This is not her room. Shen Yazi's chaotic head suddenly woke up with fright. She didn't bother to put on her shoes and walked out. Then she saw her emperor's father-in-law sitting outside reviewing memorials. She was so frightened that she stood there, unable to react to the situation. Gu Swiding noticed the movement, looked up, and saw her standing there blankly, still wearing the thin light pink gauze dress from last night, with a pair of fleshy and tender feet just stepping on the black marble floor. The face, which was as white as grease, was stained with a thin layer of red, and a pair of deer-like eyes looked at him with wide eyes, full of confusion. Looking at her like this, an uncontrollable wave of emotion surged in his heart, and he stretched out his hand towards her. "Come here." Shen Yazi, instead of stepping forward, actually ran toward the inner hall as if frightened. As a result, he accidentally fell to the ground with a thud. Gu Swiding stepped forward quickly, picked her up and scolded her with a stern face, "Why are you running?" Shen Yazi leaned in his arms, feeling the endless heat coming from his body, and his whole face turned red. She is his daughter-in-law, how could he hold her in his arms without any suspicion? She struggled to stand up, but he held him down. "Don't move, you think you didn't fall hard enough." As he said that, he hugged her directly. Shen Yazi stared at him blankly, his brain shutting down again. "Father, father." Hearing this, Gu Swiding paused for a moment without responding. He carried her to the bed and put her down. "But where did you fall?" Shen Yazi shook his head desperately. Gu Swiding lifted up her skirt. When he saw the red marks on her knees, he frowned and brought medicated oil to rub it on her. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 586. Shen Yi knew he wanted to hide, but he held him down vigorously. "Father, why am I here?" Shen Yi finally couldn't help but ask. Gu Swiding put down the medicinal oil, put his hands on her sides, and leaned forward. "What do you think?" Shen Yi couldn't help but lean back, trying to stay away from him, but he couldn't hold on and fell down. Gu Swiding chuckled, leaned over and took a bite on her fleshy cheek. "From now on, you are no longer Princess Zhao, but my concubine Chen." Shen Yi looked at him in shock, not knowing how to react. Facing her appearance, Gu Swiding was actually not as calm as he appeared. He knew in his heart that this was a ridiculous thing, but he couldn't control himself at all. The first time he saw her at the banquet yesterday, he had an unreasonable urge to be with her. However, thinking about the identity gap between the two of them, he restrained himself. After returning to his dormitory, he couldn't fall asleep all night, and all he could think about was her. Her white sleeves fell down while she was drinking, revealing a fat wrist, round and white, which made him feel itchy just looking at it, and he had the urge to take a bite. The crystal beads of sweat condensed on her pink cheeks, which reminded people of the dew condensed on the petals of flowers. Her delicate lips opened and she took a lotus seed into her mouth. God knows, when he saw this scene, he wanted to be like the lotus seed between her lips and teeth. Although she is a little fatter, every move she makes is cute and captivates his mind. Afraid that he would lose control if he looked any further, he never dared to set his eyes on her again. After tossing and turning until midnight, Gu Swiding finally couldn't bear it anymore and called the secret guard over and ordered him to check on Princess Zhao's situation. As it was getting dark, the secret guard reported the situation of Princess Zhao. Princess Zhao, named Shen Yi, married King Zhao as his concubine 3 years ago. She was not favored by King Zhao because of her fat body, and she stayed alone in the empty house for 3 years. Seeing this, Gu Swiding suddenly crumpled the paper in his hand into a ball. He closed his eyes and made up his mind. Without even having breakfast, Gu Swiding walked out of the palace lightly and went straight to Prince Zhao's mansion to pick him up. During the process, King Zhao remained silent and even acted quite cooperative. When Gu Swiding left, he glanced at him and said, "I have sent the document of your reconciliation with Zhi to the Ministry of Household Affairs, so that King Zhao can take care of himself in the future." The King of Zhao responded. On the way from the capital to the other palace, Gu Swiding watched Shen Yi all the way, but she slept like a piggy all the time. This also made him subconsciously relieved, because he was also very confused at the time and was not ready to face her immediately. As the morning passed, he pondered for a long time and was extremely sure of his mind. When Mi Yang came, she was stopped by Eunuch Lu, who was guarding the door. "Step aside." She barged in directly, and Eunuch Lu did not dare to stop her. After all, he was the #1 person in the harem before today. Mi Yang entered the inner hall and saw Gu Swiding pressing Shen Yi against the head of the bed, lowering his head to kiss her. At this moment, she was in a terrible mood. Shen Yi has become like this, how can Gu Swiding still be able to be mean to her? Samsara Pan, to tell the truth, although Shen Yi is a little fatter now, he is not obese, but round, and his skin is as white and greasy as fat, pink and translucent, which has its own charm. "Shut up, which side are you on?" The reincarnation disc was silent. Seeing someone breaking in, Shen Yi immediately reached out to cover his face and shrank into the bed. Although the emperor brought her here without her consent, now that their situation has spread, she doesn't need to be a human being anymore. The world will not blame the emperor, but will label her as beauty and disaster. Although her appearance has nothing to do with beauty and misfortune. She herself was also very fascinated. The emperor's taste was so peculiar that instead of favoring the charming ladies in the palace, he fell in love with her, a fat daughter-in-law. Gu Swiding turned around and sat upright on the bed, blocking Shen Yi behind him, and looked at Mi Yang lightly. Li Fei, you have overstepped your bounds. Mi Yang. Where is the beloved concubine who was promised to be the favorite in the harem? How does Gu Switting's cold and ruthless look like the attitude he should have towards a beloved concubine? Samsara Pan, characters are characters, reality is reality. I can't press Gu Switting's head to make him love you. After all, the human heart is the most uncontrollable. I can you. Mi Yang felt her face hurt terribly at this moment. And this trial of the world. Reincarnation disc, warning. If the trial world is interrupted twice in a row, the host's soul is at risk of being strangled. Mi Yang. So, she could only watch Gu Switting and Shen Yazi being entangled again? No, she Mi Yang will never compromise. Your Majesty, why is Princess Zhao in your bedroom? Mi Yang's face showed a mixture of disbelief and a look of being about to cry. Gu Switting noticed the trembling uneasiness of the person behind him, and his eyes turned cold when looking at Mi Yang. King Zhao has reconciled with Princess Zhao, doesn't concubine Li know? Mi Yang's face twitched. Where did she know? As soon as the night passed, Gu Switting couldn't wait to get Shen Yazi to her side. The speed really amazed her. Gu Switting added, now that she is my concubine Chen, does concubine Li still have any doubts? Mi Yang pinched her palms tightly and said, Your Majesty, this, isn't it good? After all, Princess Zhao is your daughter-in-law, and now she has become your concubine. If this spreads out, people in the world will probably talk about it. I don't need you to worry about this matter, Gu Switting said slowly. Lu Peng, send concubine Li out. Mi Yang had no choice but to leave. Just as she stepped out of the inner hall, Gu Switting's voice came from behind. Concubine Li broke into my palace without permission, stripped her of her title, demoted her to a concubine, moved out of Lijing Palace, and was banned for 3 months. Mi Yang's heart trembled, and she looked back at Gu Switting, only to meet his cold eyes. At this moment, she almost thought she saw the who once looked down on all living beings from a high place. Not daring to stay any longer, he left the palace in a slightly disorderly manner. Only Gu Switting and Shen Yazi were left in the dormitory. For a while, no one spoke. Gu Switting was cautious and didn't know how to speak, while Shen Yazi was so confused that he didn't know where to speak. After a while, Shen Yazi raised his eyes and looked at Gu Switting. When he met his pair of dark and deep eyes, he panicked and lowered his eyelashes. Your Majesty, have I made peace with King Zhao? How come she, Princess Zhao, doesn't know? Gu Switting held up her chin with his fingers to prevent her from escaping him. Just this morning, when you slept like a little pig. There was an endearing smile in his voice. Also, you are not allowed to call me Your Majesty. You can call me by my first name, Gigi. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 587. Shen Yazi frowned in confusion, but dash. No but, Zhizi, call me Switting. Gu Switting held her face in his hands, his tone was domineering and somewhat pleading. Shen Yazi opened his lips, Shweting. The smile in Gu Switting's eyes spread to the corners of his lips, and the original composure was wiped away. His whole person had a youthful air, which made Shen Yazi stunned. He pressed her forehead against hers and said, Zhizi, don't be afraid, leave everything to me. When he said this, her heart really settled down and she couldn't help but smile at him. The pink and soft cheeks are so sweet and soft when she smiles, like a freshly baked sugar nest, which makes people want to take a bite directly to see if it is really that sweet. Thinking in his mind, Gu Switting did the same. Shen Yazi was stunned on the spot, feeling the warmth between his lips and teeth, and suddenly a sense of familiarity came to his heart. It seemed like they had been so intimate countless times. The same goes for Gu Switting. Mi Yang came in a hurry, but in the blink of an eye, she left like a prodigal dog. Along the way, she sat in the car without saying a word, which made the palace attendants afraid to speak out. Suddenly, Mi Yang sneered, and the palace man kneeling next to her buried her head lower. "Well, we can't end this trial world, right?" Then she was waiting to see how this fat guy Shenyazi fell out of favor. Goose Whitting's current obsession with her is just a continuation of his original relationship. When the two of them have been together for a long time, she doesn't believe that Goose Whitting can always be consistent with her. After all, men are lustful, right? She still has a chance. Mi Yang said this to herself in her heart. However, she waited and waited. Shenyazi's canonization ceremony came, and Goose Whitting's unfailing love for her came. Even if Mi Yang is grounded, she can still hear the news that Goose Whitting is very fond of Shenyazi. As for her, the former beloved concubine, her treatment was getting worse day by day, and her food was not as good as that of a lower-class palace official. Although she knows that everything around her is fake, the reality of the experience world created by the reincarnation disc is no different from the real world. She knows it is one thing, but experiencing it personally is another thing. Every day, listening to Samsara Disc's report on how pampered Goose Whitting was to Shenyazi, eating meals with clear soup and water, and being locked up in a small place without being allowed to go out, Mi Yang was almost depressed. But we can't end this experience directly. However, instead of making her decadent, all this made her more motivated and determined to capture Goose Whitting. Mi Yang felt very happy when she thought that after capturing his heart, this man would hold her in his hands, love and pamper her, and ignore other women. Finally, the 3-month confinement period was over, and Mi Yang was finally able to go out. After learning from Samsara Pan that Goose Whitting was now in a pavilion in the Imperial Garden, Mi Yang went there directly. On the way, she simulated countless plans to impress Goose Whitting in her mind, feeling confident. However, when she came outside the pavilion and saw the scene in the pavilion, her expression became uncontrollably distorted. In the pavilion, Goose Whitting sat Shenyazi on his lap, peeled the lychees with his own hands and fed them to her mouth. His expression was as gentle as the warm sun, and the love in his eyes almost flowed out. Sitting in his arms, Shenyazi, although chubby, looked as good as peach blossoms in March. His eyes were bright, his skin could be broken by blows, and he was as white as milk. Even the crystal lychee in Goose Whitting's hand was not comparable. At first glance, she looks like she is being pampered and cared for. She ate the lychees fed by Goose Whitting with peace of mind, as if he should serve her like this. "Is it sweet?" Goose Whitting asked. "Yeah, sweet," Shenyazi said vaguely. "Can you give me a taste?" Without waiting for her to answer, he lowered his head and grabbed her lips, turning them around and sucking them, tasting the sweetness in her mouth wantonly. Outside the pavilion, Mi Yang watched the scene with a fire burning in her eyes. Didn't notice anyone approaching at all. "Hey, isn't this our concubine Li?" "Oh no, look at my memory, there is no concubine Li nowadays, she should be called concubine Xiao." A charming woman in a rose-red palace dress covered her mouth and said with a smile. Mi Yang glanced over coldly, even a dummy dared to speak nonsense in front of her. It's a pity that she forgot that her current situation is worse than that of a dummy. The world cannot end, so Mi Yang can only use various tricks to try to seduce Goose Whitting, but she fails time and time again. She is either ignored or grounded by him. In this world of trials, she is just an ordinary person. She can't use any tricks except her own charm effect. However, her charm skills are of no use to Goose Whitting. She could only watch helplessly as Goose Whitting doted on Shenyazi to the heavens. Until his death, he could not let her go and had already reserved a place for her in the imperial mausoleum. This time the world of trials comes to a natural end. The moment her consciousness was expelled, Mi Yang felt deeply relieved. From these two trials, she summed up an experience, that is, Goose Whitting and Shenyazi should not be given a chance to meet. Otherwise, Goose Whitting would no longer be able to see other women in his eyes. So this time, she wanted to turn Goosewitting into a disabled person who could not move, but she had to maintain a clear consciousness. In this case, he could only lie on the bed obediently and let her attack. By the way, let's make Shenyazi a baby this time, Mi Yang snorted in her heart. Shenyazi turned into a suckling baby. She couldn't see how she could appear in front of Goosewitting. It's a pity that she arranged for Goosewitting and Shenyazi, but she forgot to arrange for herself. When she woke up and found that she had become a baby, Mi Yang was heartbroken. I asked you to make Shenyazi a baby, but I didn't ask you to make me a baby too, Mi Yang roared at the reincarnation disc in her heart. Samsara Pan said with a straight face, Shenyazi has indeed become a baby now. After saying this, he stopped paying attention to the crazy Mi Yang. Mi Yang had the urge to end this trial world again, but luckily she suppressed it. This time has just begun, and she cannot give up so quickly. Moreover, this time she and Shenyazi are on the same starting line. She still has her memory, so there is no reason why she can't compare with her. The growth process of a baby is boring and long. Mi Yang was forced to experience the feeling of growing up a human cub. As she grew older, she learned that the world of this trial was a secular feudal dynasty, and the country she was in was called Daki. The word feudal was learned from the first life. Her father is the duke of the town, and she is the legitimate daughter of the family. From the old duke to several cousins, everyone in the family dotes on her. At first, Mi Yang was still thinking about finding Goosewitting and seizing the time to capture him, but later she gradually became addicted to this ordinary life of being pampered by her family. Sure enough, love is something that easily corrodes people's hearts, and even the devil like her couldn't resist it. She was actually immersed in a false world and became attached to those family ties that did not exist. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 588. A few years passed and Mi Yang grew up into a big girl. During this process, she collected information from outside from time to time, trying to determine Goosewitting's identity in this world. Coincidentally, there is also a King Chen in this world, who is also the Emperor's younger brother, and is said to have the appearance of a heavenly being, also named Goosewitting. It seems that this King Chen is her target. But before she had a chance to see him, he went to the border to fight. The beautiful first meeting she planned was ruined. Goosewitting has been away for 3 years. When he came back, he was seriously injured and fell into a coma. This coma lasted another 3 years. Mi Yang knew that although Goosewitting was unconscious, he was still conscious. After all, this was what she had said from the beginning. She originally wanted to take the opportunity to enter Prince Chen's palace so that she could develop a relationship with him, but her parents refused to agree after knowing her thoughts. She was also placed under house arrest in the yard, with people watching her closely. Mi Yang felt that it was too difficult for her. This is the bad thing about the secular world. It is as difficult to go out as to climb to heaven. She can't even cast a light body spell now. Fortunately, I haven't heard any news from Shenyazi during this period. Shortly after, things took a turn for the better. Asterisk. U Prime Minister's mansion. Early in the morning, Shenyazi was dug out of the bed by her mother and groomed from head to toe. As a result, after finishing the grooming, only 7 points of her original 12 points of appearance were left. When she looked in the mirror, she was startled at first, thinking that she would look ugly after sleeping. She is going to attend the flower viewing party held by the Queen Mother today, right? Shouldn't her mother put her in a dignified, noble, and glamorous place? Why did you make her look ugly? Seeing her confusion, Mrs. Pei poked her forehead lightly and said, I know you didn't listen to what I said yesterday. I'm going to tell you again. You have to listen carefully this time. Shenyazi crossed his hands and put them on his abdomen, looking cute and cute. Well, you tell me. This time the Queen Mother is having a flower viewing party. It's a flower viewing party, but it's actually looking at you little girls to see which one of you can be the princess for King Chen. Chen Wang? Shen Yizi perked up his ears slightly. 3 years ago, this man was a reserve soldier of the god of war galloping on the battlefield, and the dream lover of thousands of girls, and maybe boys. In addition, he was the emperor's brother and the youngest son of the Queen Mother, so his future should have been bright. Unexpectedly, Tian was jealous of Lan Yan. In a battle, his head was accidentally injured and he fell into a coma. He slept for 3 years. During those 3 years, the emperor and the Queen Mother tried various methods, including summoning spirits, but King Chen still could not wake up. So, when choosing a concubine for King Chen, are you trying to get married? Shen Yizi thinks it would be great if she could marry this dear friend. She just got haircut a few months ago, so her marriage has been put on the agenda. Instead of marrying a man who will have a lot of concubines and aunts in the future, and sharing a cucumber with them, it is better to marry the vegetative King Chen. Thinking of this, her mother's voice continued, so this time when you enter the palace, try to be as low-key as possible. Don't let the Queen Mother see you. Otherwise, you will be a widow in the future. As he said this, his eyes were full of hidden worries. Being low-key, Shen Yizi felt that no one was better at this than her. Over the past 15 years, she has adhered to this principle of life all the time, without showing any signs of being a modern person. That's right, she wore it. To be precise, it was a miscarriage, and then she was given birth to by her mother. She became a baby again and slowly grew up. To live a new life, Shen Yizi did not have any lofty ideals and ambitions, and just wanted to spend his life leisurely and comfortably. Sitting on the carriage heading to the palace, Shen Yizi was thinking about the course of action for this flower viewing party. If you want to keep a low profile, just find a secluded place and wait for the party to end. It's simple and easy. High-profile words. Forget it, she was afraid of making things worse, so she might as well just stay calm and be a salted fish. The banquet was held in a large garden. The garden was colorful, with birds chirping and flowers fragrant. The girls who arrived early were walking among the flowers, which looked pleasing to the eye. On the wide lawn, there are desks with fruits, snacks, and drinks on display. If you are tired from strolling in the garden, you can come here to rest. The Queen Mother was not present, so when Shen Yizi arrived, he did not need to salute her and went straight to the rest area. Meet Lu Jun from Zhou Xiang's family on the way. As the daughter of the Prime Minister's family, the relationship between Shen Yizi and Lu Jun is very subtle. Although they have known each other for more than 10 years, they are just acquaintances now. Today's Lu Jun was obviously made ugly by his family members, and he looked much gloomier than usual. The two looked at each other, looked away in tacit understanding, and then walked in different directions. Sitting down behind the desk, Shen Yizi looked at the exquisite food in front of him and resisted the temptation with difficulty. Eating can't be avoided without drinking tea, and drinking tea is probably inevitable without having to go to the toilet. In today's crowded and troubled days, going to the toilet in the palace is not a safe thing no matter how you think about it. So Shen Yizi refrained from touching anything on the table and sat for a while. He felt that the sun here was not very good, so he moved behind a flower bush. The area here is half shade and half warm, which is perfect for her to spread out and carry out photosynthesis. It is true that photosynthesis is true. When the sun shines on her body, the sunlight is simultaneously converted into a kind of energy by the orb in her body. This energy can be absorbed by her body. Let's call it good spiritual power. The orb in her body was picked up from a stream in the mountains during a trip in her previous life. Seeing that it was white, round, clear and lovely, she put it in her pocket. After returning home, she forgot about it. She took it out when she was doing laundry, and then put it on the window sill. That night, a supernatural event happened. She got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and saw that the bead that had been lying on the windowsill had risen into the air. It was surrounded by a silver-white halo, and seemed to be basking in the moon, which is the legendary absorption of the essence of the moon. Shenyazi was not clear-headed at the time, so he actually walked over and touched it with his hand. As a result, the beads got into her body and disappeared. Immediately afterwards, something even more tragic happened. There was an earthquake in her area. Before she could run out, the building she was in collapsed, burying her inside. Then, there is no more. When she regained consciousness again, she had been reborn in her mother's belly, but the memory of her previous life was still there. Probably because the underworld was too busy with business, he forgot to let her drink mangpo soup. The bead also came with it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 589. In the following 10 years, Shenyazi became familiar with the use of this bead. It is similar to an energy converter that can absorb the essence of the sun and moon, convert it into spiritual power, and feed it back to her master, nourishing her body. The benefits of spiritual power are obvious. She has never been sick once since she was a child, not even a headache or fever. This is one. The second thing is her skin. Her spiritual power gave her the legendary milk baby skin. Her parents are both handsome boys with an appearance score of 90 or above. As their daughter, her facial features are already exquisite. Coupled with this impeccable skin, her appearance is not that she is narcissistic. Sometimes she looks in the mirror, she couldn't help but be fascinated by herself. Another aspect is perception. Her 5 senses are much better than ordinary people. For example, she can hear subtler sounds and see the texture of leaves dozens of meters away. Thanks to the orb in her body, she grew into a light, healthy, fair-skinned and beautiful little fairy. Thank you to Grandpa Sun, thank you to Emu the Moon, Amen. For this reason, the one thing she does most every day is bask in the sun and the moon. Various stalls. She was very satisfied with the state of affairs, but now, an imminent crisis had arrived. As a woman of the right age who has already reached the age of hairpins, people around her feel that it is time for her to find a good family to marry. However, she refused. So, how about she go to the Queen Mother and recommend herself, saying that she is willing to marry King Chen. But when she thought that if she did this, Ms. Lu might break her legs when she went back, Shenyazi gave up. Forget it, let's continue lying out in the sun. There was a slight rustling sound, and Shenyazi turned his head to look, his eyes fixed. Oh my God, what a cute little fairy is this? It was a little dog no bigger than a child's fist. It was white all over, like a stuffed ball. Its eyes were so bright and moist that it made her heart melt. Shenyazi felt the groundhog screaming in his heart, but he tried hard not to make too big a move, so as not to scare the little thing away. She showed an ant-like smile, baby, come to sister. Perhaps seduced by her beauty and soothed by her gentle attitude, the little dog slowly walked towards her. Because the body is too small and fluffy, the puppy's short limbs are completely buried, and it looks like a cloud floating slowly when it moves. Shenyazi's hands were extremely itchy. When the puppy came within an arm's length of her, she finally couldn't help it anymore. She picked up the little thing and brought it to her cheek to rub it. It's so soft. The nobles in the palace had the custom of raising slave dogs, and this one must have been raised by that noble. Someone might come to find him soon, so Shenyazi decided to seize the time and play with it for a while. However, at this moment, the Queen Mother arrived. People in the garden huffed and knelt for a long time, shouting, "See the Queen Mother." Shenyazi was reluctant to let the puppy go. When he knelt down, his brain suddenly twitched and he stuffed the dog into his arms. The Queen Mother barked, and Shen Yizi followed Dalu and stood up. He immediately looked into her arms, fearing that the dog would be suffocated by her. Unexpectedly, the dog poked its head out of her arms and barked. A voice. It was quiet time at this moment, and as soon as the milky sound came out, everyone looked over, including the Queen Mother. Seeing that a puppy's head actually emerged from Shen Yizi's arms, everyone's expressions were a bit indescribable, and some people even covered their headscarves and began to snicker. Shen Yizi. This shouldn't be considered a breach of etiquette in front of the Queen Mother, right? She looked down at the dog in her arms and met its wet eyes. If she is punished by the Queen Mother for this, then she will do whatever it takes to get this dog and then ravage it 100 times a day. This way the punishment she suffered because of it wouldn't be in vain. However, the Queen Mother was obviously very tolerant and did not blame her for this and let it go easily. You little girls, you can play freely and don't worry about me, an old man, the Queen Mother said with a gentle smile. But how could anyone take her words seriously? Naturally, I spent a lot of energy to deal with it. Perform your best if you want to reach the top in one step, and don't want to be a living widow, and your efforts will reduce your sense of presence. Shen Yizi was naturally the one who tried to reduce her presence. She was nestling in the corner with her little puppy in her arms, and a dark shadow suddenly covered her. As soon as she raised her head, she saw a charming and beautiful girl standing in front of her, looking at her with a strange look. She couldn't help but touch her face. Do we know this girl? The person standing in front of Shen Yizi was naturally Mi Yang. She did not answer her question, but leaned over and whispered in her ear, Shen Yizi, this time, King Chen is mine. She didn't notice that when she said these words, a flash of deep thought flashed in the eyes of the little puppy in Shen Yizi's arms. Until Mi Yang left, Shen Yizi still felt inexplicable. Is this girl mentally ill? Suddenly ran over and said this. Did she think that she would rob King Chen from her? Although she did have thoughts of marrying King Chen, it was just a thought, and she was sure that she had never revealed it to the outside world. So, why is this girl talking to her like a love rival? Shen Yizi couldn't figure it out and was too lazy to think about it anymore, so he went through the banquet peacefully. Just before it was over, Aunt Chu, who was beside the Queen Mother, came over and said that the Queen Mother wanted to say a few words to her. Shen Yizi's heart suddenly jumped up. Has she finally been noticed by the Queen Mother? But then I thought about it and realized that this was not a bad thing. Maybe I could get what I wanted, so I felt at ease again. Following Aunt Chu to a pavilion. Just when Shen Yizi was about to salute, the Queen Mother waved her hand and said, no need, come to Ai's house quickly. This attitude is a bit too kind. After she came closer, the Queen Mother took her little hand and sat down on the bench next to the railing. She smiled warmly and said, it seems that Xuanu likes you very much. She actually fell asleep in your arms. Usually it's the Ai family, it's hard to even touch it. Shen Yizi's first reaction was, is the cutie called Xuanu? As expected, the name is also very cute. Second reaction. Mother, do you raise Xuanu? What a sin, she actually wanted to play with the Queen Mother's dog. Shen Yizi hurriedly took out the dog, held it in both hands and handed it over, apologizing. The Queen Mother took it and stroked the soft fur on the dog's body, which made Shen Yizi feel greedy. She saw the dog sleeping earlier, and she was afraid of waking it up, so she didn't even want to touch it. Like it? The Queen Mother asked with a smile. Shen Yizi nodded. How could he not like such a cute little dog? Then beg for it to be given to you. Shen Yizi hurriedly waved his hand. Mother, this is your beloved thing, I cannot have it. Seeing that the Queen Mother did not insist, she felt relieved. She likes this puppy very much, but if the Queen Mother gives it to her, she would not dare to accept it. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 590. The Queen Mother obviously knew how to chat well, and she unknowingly led Shen Yizi astray. When she was led away by Aunt Chu, she was blown by the wind and her mind came to her senses. She seemed to have sold herself just now. Completely. Damn it, maybe she had a chance to marry His Highness King Chen, but when the Queen Mother saw that she was so unwilling to make progress, she would definitely give her a big cross. But as a salty fish, she quickly comforted herself. No one can take what is hers, just look at it if it is not hers. Let everything take its course. In the pavilion, the Queen Mother stroked the sleeve dog that had opened its eyes at some point, and said with a smile, "Is this her?" Xuenu jumped off her knees and let out a cry. Back at the house, Shen Yizi was interrogated by Mrs. Pei. After learning about her performance at the flower viewing banquet, Mrs. Pei felt relieved. Originally, you only have one face to look at, and you have revealed your lazy nature in front of the Queen Mother. It's strange that she can like you. Shen Yizi, is this still my mother? However, Ms. Pei apparently felt relieved too early. Within a few days, someone came from the palace. The one who came was Qiao Ziyuking, the in charge of the Queen Mother's side, and he also brought an edict. The Shen family has a noble family, a beautiful land and a tassel, the same pronunciation as Fu, a virtuous inner code, and pure conduct. I can choose to be Princess Chen and marry into the palace on the 27th of May. I admire this. After Qiao Ziyuking left, the entire Prime Minister's mansion was depressing. Although Shen Yizi was elated, it was hard to show it, so he stayed silent together, looking like he was shocked. After returning to the room, Mrs. Pei lay down on the bed and began to cry bitterly. Shen Yizi sat on the edge of the bed, searching her intestines and stomach to comfort her mother. When the Prime Minister arrived, Shen Yizi felt relieved and stood up to wish her father a blessing. Shen Jiangan touched her head and said, "You go back first, your mother is here and I will persuade her." Going back to his room, Shen Yizi also threw himself on the bed, burying himself in the pillow and twitching his shoulders. The personal maid Qiuqui thought she was too sad and was crying while hugging the quilt. She was so anxious that she was circling around the bedside. "Girl, if you think about it, this marriage is actually not that bad. Once you get married, you will be Princess Chen. You are the eldest in the whole house. You don't have to serve your mother-in-law. You only have to go to the palace on the 15th day of every lunar month to serve the Queen Mother. Just say hello. Secondly, you don't have to worry about your husband drifting away and bringing in a bunch of aunts and concubines to cause trouble for you. Thirdly, Qiuqui was stuck. In short, there is nothing bad about being a widow, don't you think so?" Shen Yizi, "Yes, why is it wrong? It's so right." She almost wanted to give Qiuqui a round of applause. She is truly worthy of being her confidant, and everything she says is from her heart. Shen Yizi turned over on the bed, revealing a pretty face. Where was the slightest sadness on that face? Qiuqui was dumbfounded. "Girl, you..." Shen Yizi blinked at her, but sighed, "Oh, I feel much better after crying." "Qiuqui, help your girl, let me go to the lake to enjoy the breeze. Photosynthesis has not yet taken place today. Except when it was windy or raining, on what day did she fall asleep?" This is probably the thing she persisted with the longest. Of course, it's also because the benefits of persistence are obvious, and it couldn't be easier to do. She can lie down or spread out as she pleases. Otherwise, with her advanced stage of laziness and severe procrastination, she might have given up long ago. The news that the girl from the Yixiang mansion was given the title of Princess Chen spread throughout the streets and alleys of the capital overnight. If King Chen was still well, there might be many little girls who would secretly give Shen Yizi a prick, but now, most of them sigh in sympathy. Of course, Mi Yang is not included. When she learned that Shen Yizi had been given the title of Princess Chen, she lost her temper in the room on the spot and smashed everything she could. She was so courteous to the Queen Mother at the flower viewing banquet that day. I wonder if she, Mi Yang, had ever courted anyone before? However, in order to marry Gu Swiding, she had no choice but to put down her posture temporarily and coax the Queen Mother. The Queen Mother obviously liked her very much, so why did she end up giving Shen Yizi the title of Princess Chen? Are these two people destined to be a couple? No, she doesn't believe that there are official couples in this world who can't be separated. Thinking about it from another perspective, isn't this a good thing? Judging from the situation at the flower viewing banquet that day, Shen Yizi definitely didn't want to marry Gu Swiding, so he kept a low profile and tried not to attract the Queen Mother's attention. But now that she was given a marriage to King Chen, she might show some dissatisfaction to the unconscious Gu Swiding. However, Gu Swiding was conscious and would definitely hear what she did and remember it in his mind. In her heart, if this happened, maybe Gu Swiding would be disappointed in her without her taking action. What she had to do during this period was to try her best to convince her parents to allow her to enter Prince Chen's mansion. When the time comes for her to show affection and closeness to Gu Swiding again, she is still afraid that Gu Swiding's heart will not shift towards her in comparison with the two. Thinking of this, Mi Yang was no longer so angry, and her mood became more relaxed. She was waiting to see how Shen Yizi would make Gu Swiding lose his feelings for her. There are many topics in the capital. The matter of Princess Chen was discussed for a while after dinner, and the heat gradually subsided. The only person who will be continuously affected is the person concerned. At this moment, the Right Prime Minister's mansion is extremely busy from top to bottom. It's already March, and there are only more than 2 months left before the wedding. Can you not be busy if you want to condense the wedding process, which should last at least half a year, into 2 months? Mrs. Pei wishes she could grow 8 more arms and legs. As a girl waiting to be married, Shen Yizi has no time to relax. Although she doesn't need to embroider the wedding dress. Mrs. Pei knew what kind of virtue her daughter was, and she had never expected her to embroider a wedding dress, so she had already prepared it for her. Her beauty makes Shen Yizi want to marry her once he sees her. But this wedding dress cannot be put to use now, because the wedding dress has been contracted by the top embroiderer in the palace. But, she must be willing to make a wallet or something for her future husband-in-law. It would be unreasonable if you don't give your future husband a single thing to do. Time passed quickly in the chaos of war. In a blink of an eye, the day came for Shen Yizi to get married. After going through the entire process of washing, applying makeup, combing hair, and dressing up for the wedding, Shen Yizi felt that his salted fish was about to become a dead fish. Looking at herself in the mirror wearing her wedding dress, Shen Yizi suddenly felt that the scene had an inexplicable sense of familiarity, as if she had experienced the scene before. But, is this possible? In her previous life, this was her first time getting married. Shen Yizi breathed a sigh of relief when his eldest brother carried him into the sedan chair. There is no such thing as sadness. After all, Prince Chen's mansion and Prime Minister's mansion are just across the street, and it only takes a quarter of an hour to go home. She was more excited, she was finally heading towards a more salty life. Congratulations.